Alright, hello all you crazy people out there, my name is Dragonite and welcome back to a Blonde Ray of Sunshine. So this is chapter 4, in the last part. Fireball the Typhlosion has gotten lost, and in this part Antoshi is going to have to find him. Let's go! Matt, the thief, raced down a long alleyway with Fireball closing in behind him. He panted heavily, nearly tripping over a metal trash can due to constantly looking down at the display screen on his phone. He ran recklessly into a street, blowing through the crowds of people. Cars screeched to a halt to avoid hitting him. Fireball charged through the gap that Matt made, relentless in his pursuit. The thief slid over the hood of a parallel parked car before rushing down another alleyway. With Fireball once again closing in on him, Matt looked at his phone before suddenly turning a corner down another alley. "Here he comes," Fireball heard him say. Fireball narrowed his eyes and followed him around the corner. He came to a sudden stop, face to face with Matt and another person. A young woman with dark skin and long brown hair stood in front of a parked convertible with the top down. She seemed very bitter to have to deal with Fireball. "Go, Malamar," she said, tossing out a Pokeball. It opened to reveal a creature akin to an upside-down squid. It had no rhythm, no life, no motion to its body, standing still as a statue. Its eyes were brutally cold and empty, as though it had experienced unspeakable pain. Fireball was unsettled by its glare, too concerned to want to battle it. "Malamar, hypnosis!" Malamar's eyes glowed in a mesmerizing swirl of colors. Fireball could not turn away from Malamar's gaze, his vision blurring and fading as he fell into a hypnotic state. His eyes rolled and closed before falling unconscious. "Alright," she said. "He's out. Let's get him in there." Fireball suddenly groaned, lifting himself back up onto his hands and knees. The other two looked on in shock. "Oh crap," Matt remarked, watching Fireball get up. "This Typhlosion is tough." The young woman stuck to her teeth before Malamar used his hypnosis on him again. His eyes rolled back into his head and he fell limp on the ground. She cautiously walked up to him, nudging him with the tip of her sneakers. "Now he's out," she said with an exasperated sigh. "You couldn't park anywhere closer, Jalen," Matt asked in frustration. "I had to run a mile." "You couldn't steal one little kid's wallet sooner," she snapped back. "God, you're stupid. Don't put any blame on me after you once again prove how useless you are. Sorry that there aren't 1,000 nearby alleyways that could fit a car at a moment's notice. How did you even let things get bad enough where you were about to get beat down by some kid's Typhlosion?" "I got impatient," he remarked, shrugging. Jalen shook her head in disappointment as she opened the car's trunk. "Look, the point is, I got the kid's wallet and we have a Typhlosion. A strong one. And look at him, he's huge. This guy can easily sell for millions." "Yeah, well, you better hope so. Otherwise, we're dead. Literally." Jalen walked over and knelt next to Fireball, grunting with effort as she managed to roll him over onto his back. "Grab his legs," she said. Matt followed her order while she hooked her arms under Fireball's. "Alright, 1, 2, lift." The two strained loudly, lifting the heavy Typhlosion and carrying him over to the open trunk. The car's suspension creaked as they rolled him inside. They both sighed in relief before Jalen shut the trunk. With her hands on her hips, she watched Matt rifle through Antoshi's wallet. "You're a complete idiot, you know that?" Jalen remarked. "You were supposed to stay in Cinnabar until the end of the month. Instead, you followed some random kid here all the way back to just here just to steal his wallet. This is why nobody takes you seriously." She glanced over at the trunk. "You're lucky we managed to bag this Typhlosion." He's got a few thousand in cash, Matt idly remarked, ignoring her. He opened up the side flap to find 7 gym badges. "Oh ho, yes," he added with a grin. "I knew this kid was payday. These badges have little computer chips inside them. I've seen them go for 100 grand each. I can get Jeff to buy them off me." "Jeff?" Jalen asked with a disgusted look on her face. "You mean the creepy black market guy that looks like he hasn't showered in a year?" "Hey, his money's as good as anyone else's. It just, smells bad." "Yeah, well, there's nothing funny about sitting here waiting to get made. Get in the car, stupid. We're leaving." Matt scowled at her as she watched her get into the driver's seat. He straightened his jacket and jumped into the passenger side while Jalen started the car. "Stop jumping into the car like that," she snapped at him. "You're going to scratch the upholstery." "Whatever," he muttered, folding his arms across his chest. She sucked his teeth, exasperated with having to continually deal with him. She slowly drove out of the alleyway onto the road. She remained careful to keep her speed down to avoid attracting attention, bringing Fireball to an unknown destination. A couple hours had passed since Antoshi last saw Fireball. He had never been separated from his best friend or even lost sight of him for such a long stretch of time throughout their entire journey. He continued calling out for Fireball, asking people if they'd seen a Typhlosion. Ultimately, he got no leads. With a heavy heart, he tirelessly trudged on towards the city. He couldn't rest until he found Fireball. What can I do, he thought. Should I tell my parents? Do I go call them now? Where's the Pokemon Center? Maybe I should look for the police instead. He nodded to himself. That's what I'll do. I should find the police. He quickly pulled out his compendium, his hands shaking as he scanned over the map of Viridian City to locate its police station. Just as he put the map away, he heard the chirp of a police sirens behind him. He and others on the street stopped and turned around to see a police cruiser slowing to a halt. The driver opened the door and Officer Jenny exited the vehicle. Right away, Antoshi began to wave his arms to get her attention. "Officer, please help!" he called out as she put her hat on and straightened it. She stared at him for a moment, taken aback by the fact that he was waving her over. It was not the kind of thing a guilty suspect did. She shut the car door before grabbing the radio on her shoulder. She informed the station that she was approaching one of the suspicious persons called in from the Route 1 gate. "What's going on here?" she asked as she walked up to the trembling boar. "Officer, you have to help me. This guy, he stole my wallet and my buddy Fireball. He's a Typhlosion. He went after him, and he's lost, and I'm lost, and I can't find him, and you have to help. I don't know what to do." Okay, slow down," she calmly replied. Antoshi was very clearly shaken up. He nodded, wiping tears from his eyes, trying to slow his panicked breathing. "I'm here because the gate guard on Route 1 called in a suspicious activity involving a blonde kid in a black shirt. That's you. Along with another individual and a Pokemon. Let's just take it from there and explain it slower this time, okay?" Antoshi took a few deep breaths and swallowed a lump in his throat before trying again. "Okay, a man stole my wallet on Route 1. My traveling buddy, he's a Typhlosion named Fireball, chased after him and he got away from me. I tried to follow them, but by the time I got to Viridian City, I couldn't find him. I've been looking everywhere for Fireball. He's my only friend and I'm really scared and I don't know what to do." "Alright, I understand better now," she said. Antoshi sighed and continued to wipe tears from his eyes. "I'm going to take you to the police station now. You're not under arrest, okay? However, I am going to find Fireball for you, I promise." You are?" he asked, cautiously elated by the promise of being united with his buddy. "Absolutely. I can tell how much you care about your Pokemon, and nothing will give me greater joy than seeing you reunited." Antoshi took a deep breath and sighed heavily, trying to keep it together. "Thank you, officer," he replied, much more calmly than before. Antoshi followed Jenny back to her squad car. She held the back door open for him. "You'll have to get in the back," she told him. "It's standard procedure. Even though you're not under arrest, I'm not allowed to let civilians ride up front." Antoshi nodded, climbing into the vehicle. Jenny shut the door behind him. She got in the driver's seat, reaching for her car's radio. She informed them that she was returning to the station with him in her custody. She put the car in gear and began to drive back to the station. "So what's your name, kid?" she asked, looking through her rear view mirror. "Antoshi," he softly replied before clearing his throat. "Antoshi. That's a unique name. I've never heard it before. I'm Jenny, in case you haven't met any of my sisters during your travels." Antoshi grinned weakly. "Fireball and I haven't had any run-ins with the law." Jenny chuckled. "That's good. Keep it that way." As they drove towards their destination, Antoshi solemnly stared out the window. All he could think about was Fireball and hope with all his heart that he was okay. Memories of when he first met Fireball crept into Antoshi's mind's eye. Antoshi was just a small child back then, and Fireball was almost a newborn Cyndaquil given to him by his parents who hoped Antoshi would make a new friend. Antoshi was incredibly shy, oftentimes too nervous to talk to people. Making friends was hard for him. Any little thing frightened him and usually sent him running for his parents. The young Antoshi didn't know what to think of Fireball at first, but when the fires on Cyndaquil's back first ignited, it shocked and scared the boy so much that he never wanted to see him again. It took some time for the two to get to know each other and be comfortable around one another. It didn't help that Fireball was a particularly rambunctious Cyndaquil. He frequently ran around the house, knocking objects over, tearing down the curtains, jumping on anything he could reach. For a while, Antoshi was unable to get over being intimidated by Fireball's constant energy. However, the two eventually became tentative playmates. One day, while playing outside, the little Cyndaquil inadvertently coughed up a ball of fire that completely singed off Antoshi's eyebrows and some hair. After consoling their distraught young son, his parents decided to name him Fireball. Pages got stuck. Stop that. Since then, Antoshi and Fireball grew closer and forged an initially rocky bond of friendship. Antoshi recalled how they would spend all day together, and at night, Fireball slept at the foot of his bed. And Toshi's journey felt like a whirlwind of happiness, hard work, highs and lows, and new, incredible locations to visit. They made so many memories that Antoshi surely wouldn't forget for the rest of his life. Yet, it all never would have happened without Fireball. Antoshi clenched his fist, knowing that Fireball would not give up on him if he was in a bind. Antoshi was determined to find his friend. Though he was scared, he resolved to be strong for the sake of his best friend. The drive to the station was short. Jenny parked the car outside before getting out and opening the door for Antoshi. She led him inside the station while greeting her fellow officers. Antoshi had never been inside a police station before. The Viridian City station seemed quite busy. Officers and their partner Pokemon walked around constantly, phones rang in all directions, and the air was rife with the smell of coffee. Jenny guided Antoshi to a small break room that had several tables and chairs as well as coffee and snack machines. "I'm going to enlist the help of a few of my officers for this," she said. "I'll work right away to find Fireball for you. You can stay here as long as you like. Feel free to walk around if you need to, but don't disturb anybody who's working. Make yourself at home, okay?" Antoshi nodded. "Thank you again, Officer Jenny." She gave him a reassuring smile before departing. Antoshi looked around. He was alone in the small room. He slowly paced around before taking a seat at one of the tables. Without Fireball around, everything seemed so quiet. He sighed heavily, his hands clasped, knowing all he could do was wait and hope for the best. Jalen and Matt drove up to a poorly kept house in the middle of a seemingly abandoned neighborhood. As they got out of the car, Matt took the lead and hastily walked up to the front door with Antoshi's wallet in hand. He gave it a few knocks before standing back on the street beside Jalen. "So tell me something," Jalen said. "Why did you follow that kid all the way back here just for his wallet?" "Because I knew that we would get his Typhlosion too." "You're so full of it." Matt sighed. "I didn't give up on anything. That's why. Yeah, it was stupid and it made no sense, but I see things through to the end." Jalen rolled her eyes. For her, there was no point in his actions. They waited a few moments for Jeff to come to the door but got no response. "It's the daytime," she remarked. "The burnout is probably asleep by now. Come on, Jeff, this guy had better wake up." He knocked harder on the door a few more times. "Jeff! It's Matt! Hey! Open the door!" They waited for a bit longer before Jalen sighed in frustration. "He's probably catatonic. Come on, we need to get to the warehouse and get this Typhlosion off our hands. You'd best hope he sells for a pretty penny because this is the last chance we're getting." Matt sighed, following Jalen back to the car. "Well, what the hell am I supposed to do with this kid's wallet? I can't sit on this thing forever." Jalen reached over, smacking the glove compartment open, exposing a handgun housed inside. "Put it in there for now, stupid." Matt scoffed, carelessly flinging the wallet inside and shutting it. He rested his head against his fist, glaring off in the distance as they drove away. Antoshi silently stared out the window of the break room. The police officers had come and went in and out. Antoshi didn't notice any of them, too busy lost in his own thoughts. Officer Jenny answered, followed by two policemen. "Antoshi," Jenny said, catching his attention. "This is Officer Eric and Officer Robert. There are two of our officers that are handling your case. They have a lot of experience in finding missing Pokemon." "Hello there, young man," Eric said to him. "Hello," Antoshi replied distantly. Jenny placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "I understand how upset you are. Just know that we've got all of our available officers constantly on the lookout for any Typhlosion. We're going to find him. It's just a matter of time." "Yeah, I know," he quietly said with doubt in his voice. He forced a smile to her before gazing back out the window. Jenny solemnly nodded. The three officers departed and headed for the front exit. "Poor kid's heartbroken," Robert said. "Not knowing where his only Pokemon is must be eating away at him." "I know exactly what that's like," Jenny replied with a pained look on her face. The sadness seeping out of Antoshi's head began to stir up some bad memories for her. Once outside, Jenny heaved a sigh. "I'm gonna head out on patrol for a bit. I'll see if I can find anything." "Gotcha," Robert said as Jenny departed from their company. Antoshi watched Officer Jenny get in her cruiser and drive off. "There's got to be something I can do," he thought, rhythmically clenching his fists. "I shouldn't be here doing nothing. I should be out there looking for him, but what if I can't? What if I never find him? What can I do?" He slapped his fist down on the counter in frustration, causing an audible bang. He quickly got a hold of himself, looking around to see if anybody else noticed the noise. He sat down at the table, feeling incredibly lightheaded. He held his head in both his hands, trying to simmer down. He had no one to talk to, no one to confide in, no one to console him. holding it together was turning out to be a painful endeavor. Jalen drove behind a large food market, parking by the service entrance. A handful of rats in a nearby dumpster, including some Ratata and Raticate, scattered as she and Mac both got out of the car. I'm still pissed that we have to report to Chad, he said as he shut the door. The guy is such an uptight prick. Jalen rolled her eyes as she led Matt back to the back door. Well, it doesn't matter what you think. He is our boss. He reports to the boss, so if you don't want to end up in a shallow ditch, you deal with him being your boss. Whatever, he replied, disinterested, before she rapped on the door with a specific rhythm. A metal slat slid open, revealing a pair of menacing eyes. Yeah? A gruff voice asked on the other side. Delivery, she said. Password, the man replied. What's today, Tuesday? She asked, looking over at Matt, who nodded. Origami paper crane. It's folded origami paper crane, Jalen, the man behind the door said angrily. Get it right next time or get lost. The slat slid shut. Just keep barking your orders, doorman, she muttered under the sound of a motor of a nearby delivery door rolling up. She got back into the car, slowly driving it in while Matt casually followed inside on foot. The door rolled closed behind them. As Jalen got out of the car once again, a man in a classy suit and perfect posture strolled up to them. He was flanked by a particularly large, muscular man. He wore an expensive watch, his hair neatly slicked back, a fresh-cut rose in his breast pocket. Matt rolled his eyes, leaning up against the hood of the car. Chad! Jalen greeted him with a surprised look on her face. You're here today. I am indeed, he replied with a charming pearly white smile. He snapped his fingers and pointed to the trunk. Open it, doorman. Jalen tossed the keys to the larger man. Matthew, he explained, gasping and holding out his hands. It's such a surprise that you're here. If I recall correctly, you were ordered to take a nice little vacation on Cinnabar. Matt pursed his lips and nervously glanced away. Strange that you would ignore a direct order like that. You wouldn't want me to think that you are untrustworthy, would you? No, he quickly replied. It's just I was helping Jalen with this new delivery. That's why we're here. Chad's eyes lit up. Ah, interesting. So, my two underlings, what have we got for me today? I should hope it's something worth my time. A Typhlosion, Jalen calmly said. A strong one at that. Chad puckered his lips and raised an eyebrow with an unpleasant smile. Really? Very intriguing. Much more than the unimpressive delivery of 3 little spunk you gave us 3 days ago. Chad sauntered over to the back of the car, his eyes widening in surprise. Well, this is quite the turn of events, he remarked. Matt and Jalen confidently followed to look at their prized catch. What they saw shocked them. Fireball wasn't there. An enormous feeling of dread ran through every vein of their bodies. They were very likely about to eat a bullet and be stuffed into that empty trunk. Chad, Jalen quickly spoke up. I'm telling you there. Chad turned and slapped her with the back of his hand hard enough to cause her to stumble back. Shut it, he sternly commanded. He had a bitter expression on his face, sharply contrasting his previous cordial tone. Hey, come on, Matt began to speak. Doorman threateningly stood in front of him, causing Matt to immediately pipe down. Jalen turned away, scowling angrily, holding at the side of her face. She quickly stood upright and stared at him with a serious expression. Don't screw with me, you piece of trash, Chad venomously said. I'm not going to be made a fool of. Is that clear? Yes, sir, the two replied in unison before nervously glancing at each other. Chad recomposed himself, straightening his suit, glancing at the back of his hand. He folded his arms behind his back, slowly pacing back and forth for a few moments, looking at them both. He hummed cautiously, studying their faces before deciding to speak again. Now, I'm going to ask you two a very simple question, and the two of you will simultaneously give me a very simple yes or no when I finish speaking. Were you lying to me when you told me you had a Typhlosion? No, they both quickly replied. He hummed again, staring intensely at them, tapping his lips with the tips of his fingers. The two of them swept bullets, keeping their faces straight. They knew the wrong facial twitch at this point was a death sentence. They'd seen it firsthand with the less fortunate former member under Chad's employ. Chad cleared his throat. Well, despite the fact that you two have routinely been the most pathetic underlings I've ever had, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. However, I don't care if there really was a Typhlosion in this trunk. If there was, however, I would highly suggest that the two of you get back in the city, right now, and recover it within 24 hours. No more excuses, just results. If you don't produce a Typhlosion by then, well, I suggest the two of you never show your faces around here again. Should that be the case, pray that no one from this organization ever finds you for the rest of your miserable lives. He looked at the two of them with a menacing glare. Do I make myself perfectly clear? Yes, sir, they firmly replied. Chad smiled and clasped his hands together. Very good. That's the team spirit I admire. Off you go now. The two of them immediately marched up to the car before Jalen turns the engine over. Chad stood at the front of the car. Oh, and Jalen? Matthew? They both looked at him with terrified gazes. Remember, nobody ever lies to Team Rocket and lives. The duo nervously nodded in acknowledgement before Chad playfully trilled his fingers on the hood of the car. Drive safely, he said with a pleasant smile and a wave. Jalen waited for the doorman to open the motorized door for them. She quickly backed out into the parking lot and sped away. Chad's expression turned bitter again as the door rolled closed. You idiot! Jalen screeched at Matt as they drove down the busy streets. How the hell could you not notice the damn Typhlosion escaped? Me? What about you? You were right with me the whole time. Jalen smacked her hands against the steering wheel. Matt held a hand over his forehead. Oh crap. We're dead. We're so dead. We're never going to find him. The city is huge. Chill out, okay? I'm already on the edge as it is and I don't need you freaking out next to me. She took a deep breath to calm herself down. Alright, let's think about this. When could he have gotten away from us? I don't know, we would have noticed the shift in weight if he just ducked out while we were driving. So when we were not driving? Matt's eyes lit up. At Jeff's house. That's where we start. Jalen made a quick turn down the next intersection, picking up speed. Her expression turned cold. I swear I'm gonna put this Typhlosion down if it comes to it. Chad can make a Typhlosion rug out of him or something, but I am not going back there empty-handed. Matt was surprised by the remark. It was particularly out of character for her. Jalen had always been the bossy and short-tempered and unbearable, but never bloodthirsty. He curiously glanced at the glove compartment where her gun lay. Evening started to set in. Fireball was wandering between buildings and along side streets of Viridian City for hours. He panted, drained from the constant moving and from hunger. For once, eating took a back seat in his mind. He had no idea where he was, but getting back to Antoshi and keeping away from the duo that captured him were his top priorities. He wanted to stay out of sight of others. Any passing trainer might get the idea that he was a wild Typhlosion and try to capture him. Antoshi was the only human who could understand him, and the city's wild Pokemon wouldn't know how to contact a human. He considered looking for the police, but he was unsure of what they would do if they found him. He groaned, totally exhausted, falling face first in an alleyway. He rested for a few minutes to catch his breath. The city was like a giant maze. Fireball didn't know if he was getting any closer to his friend or where to find him. He rolled over onto his back, gazing at the sparse clouds in the evening sky, hoping the buildings around him would stop spinning soon. He thought about Antoshi. His friend was almost certainly worrying relentlessly about him. He grit his teeth, digging deep to find the energy to make it back to him. After that, they needed to recover their badges from that thief. Fireball slowly rose to his feet, noticing the sound of the car engine. A bright spotlight from the street started to illuminate the alleyway. He panicked and pressed it back against the nearby wall, keeping out of its sight. Fireball! A man's strange voice called to him. His heart raced, unsure who it was and how they knew his name. It could have been more of the cruel duo's friends looking to capture him again. The spotlight faded as the car drove slowly on by. That's not what it said, but we're going with that. He peered out from behind his nook, making sure nobody was around before briskly continuing off on his solo campaign. And that's it for Chapter 4. Has not been a lucky day for Fireball. In the next chapter, we're going to continue the search. But for now, I'm going to end this off. There's a link to where you can read the story for yourself in the video description as usual. And I will see you all later.